Welcome to my show. I'm a guest here. His name is Mitch Webb. Mr. Mitch, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on. How about yourself?
I'm fine. Thank you very much, sir. Firstly, you are a personal health coach. Can you please, sir, discuss more about yourself and how you're doing currently now, sir?
Yeah, so I appreciate the opportunity to share, man. So yeah, I'm a health coach, and that practice or how I help people has evolved over the years, and it really started after a desire to help myself. I was dealing with a lot of anxiety, panic attacks. I had insomnia, eventually chronic disease, and I was working in the corporate world for about 7 years out of college, and just didn't see myself getting better in that stressful environment. And I fell in love with health and wellness when I started to try to find solutions to heal myself. And in the beginning, that started off as nutrition and exercise, and now has evolved really into healing the nervous system and healing trauma and teaching people how to re-engage and listen to their body again so that they can heal themselves. I'm a firm believer that nobody heals us, that there's nobody coming to save us, that the healing is all inside of us. And when we have chronic stress and trauma that's been untreated, and we end up with the chronic disease and fatigue and gut issues that come along with that, that's an opportunity to heal. And to do that, we have to go to the nervous system level. So, you know, my job is to hold people's hand and walk them through that process and teach them the lifestyle of healing.
That's a very, very nice story. And I also thank God that you are doing fine and well today. And with this personal story and what you've learned in the health sector, have you written any books, sir?
No, I've not written any books, but I that's on the list of to-dos eventually one day.
Oh, we hope so, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Mitch. And I
Yeah.
would like to know, as a coach, like, how do you try your best to determine the best nutrition plan for each individual? And what factor do you think are most important, sir?
Yeah, I love that question. So how do I determine personalized nutrition for people? Well, first, I love that you said personalized because that's what it is. Nutrition, any kind of approach that we're going to take to improve our health, I believe I've learned is so individualized. So the approach that I'm going to take is I'm going to get to know that person. I'm not going to be assuming and telling them what to do and, hey, here's my plan and here's how I did it. That's definitely the way that I did things early on when, I had a limited view of what was right for people and what it helped me. I was trying to, project and apply that to other people, and that's just not the case. We're all so different. So
Mm,
you know, a lot of the people that I work with, they're going to have potentially gut issues stemming from, maybe chronic fatigue. And so we're going to address the gut first, in that case. And anybody, I mean, I love like a whole foods diet, and then from there, we're really dialing in to figure out what the sensitivities are for that person and what's going to allow them to thrive. And so we're looking at how sedentary are they. We're looking at gut function. We're wanting to know, do they have autoimmune? How well is their digestion working now? What kind of energy do they have? How's their sleep? What kind of resources do they have? And what kind of foods do they like? Ultimately, we want to teach our clients how to eat, and eventually we teach them to listen to their body and follow their impulse on what's going to be good for them. In the beginning, they may not be able to listen and they may be eating foods that aren't good for them. And so I'm going to kind of take the driver seat. I'm going to let them sit in the passenger seat and I'm going to show them how to drive. And as soon as I can, my job is to hand the steering wheel over so that we can start listening to their body when it's coming from a place that's not, been stuck in junk food and processed
mm,
foods and things like that. So, um, I guess what I'm saying is when we're eating a standard American diet, let's say, that really throws our body off and it's hard to listen. So we may be craving the wrong foods. So once we implement a whole foods diet, and we start to listen to the body again, then we can say like, oh, I like these types of foods. These don't work. These do work. And that's tracking biomarkers like sleep and sex drive and energy levels and digestion over time to dial things in.
That's very nice. Thank you so much, Mr. Mitch. And what strategies do you personally recommend for building healthy habits that really last, sir?
I think repetition is really big. In the work that I do, we are really working with neuroplasticity, and that is the ability for the brain to change. And so when we have a habit, there's a deep groove there that's been reinforced over time. And so we want to observe those patterns through conscious awareness and be able to slow things down so we can see our choices, our behaviors, the emotions that come with that, and how we feel as a result, so that we can decide what is healthy and what is serving and what is no longer. And then we start to build around how to engage with that behavior, that emotion, those sensations, those symptoms as they come up. And then eventually we learn to choose different. So it's a process that's slow when it comes to neuroplasticity, and we're observing the old pattern and choosing to do something different. And we're doing that over time. So we're putting in the reps,
Hmm.
and that's going to help solidify that neuroplasticity. Um, Also, when we're new to this and we've got some new habits that we want to try on, I would say one thing at a time. Doing multiple at one time is going to confuse my clients and going to make them make it hard. We want to make it easy as possible. We want to work with them and figure out what the low hanging fruit is, meaning what are they able and willing to do right now. We don't want to take them outside of their window of tolerance and throw them into the deep end of the pool and have them forced to swim for their life when they don't know how to tread water yet. So it's baby steps, it's repetition. And then the last one I would say is habit stacking, right? So we can take a new habit and stack it onto something that we're already doing, right? So say I want to reconnect with my body. A way that I'm going to do that is I'm just going to feel my feet on the ground and help me be more present in the moment. And I know that I can do that when I'm brushing my teeth. So I know I'm going to brush my teeth twice a day. So when I do that for 30 seconds, let's say to a minute, I'm going to just be really aware of my feet on the ground and the environment that I'm in. And that's a way to integrate a new habit that's small, that's something I'm already doing, and we're getting the repetition because we're doing it twice a day.
Hmm. Thank you so much, Mr. Mitch. And what nutrition and lifestyle practice do you personally recommend, for improving energy and also reducing fatigue, sir?
Well, so if we're looking at nutrition,
Hmm.
particularly for energy and preventing fatigue, um, well, one, I want to know what's going on with your sleep, right? Are we sleeping good? Because that could be a big factor in fatigue. And then I want to look at your environment. So, it's kind of the dirty fishbowl analogy. If we got someone living with a bunch of Wi-Fi routers on and cell
Hmm.
phone towers, and they're not getting regular sunlight, and they're inside in a house that's, got fluorescent lighting that's not natural. They're eating foods that are synthetic and processed. We're going to look at all of those things that can really they just don't work with our system. And then we may look at further into their diet. Once we've eliminated the environment and the environmental stressors, if you will, we drinking water, we sleeping. Then we look at the diet. Another big creator of fatigue would be gut dysfunction, right? So if we've got an overgrowth of bacteria or yeast in the gut, or we've got a lot of inflammation, leaky gut, we've got different autoimmune diseases, we know that we can turn those things off, turn those inflammatory stressors off by removing the stressor. So someone, there's a certain amount of foods that every human is going to be slightly reactive to, and those with poor gut function, that's going to be more. And so, what we're looking to do is do some sort of short term elimination diet, whether that's through histamine or through autoimmune or through a carnivore diet or um, any kind of diet that's going to remove some of these stressors, and then slowly reintroducing, allowing the gut to heal, and then slowly reintroducing more foods to open up the diet. My goal is never to put someone on a restrictive diet, but it may be helpful in the short term to get some relief in the gut.
That's also drive me to that place because I know you said you don't usually get clients on restricted diets, but what are your views on restrictive diets, and how do you also personally guide clients towards sustainable long-term nutrition choices, sir?
Great question, man. Um, how do I view restrictive diets? Um, I see now when we're talking restrictive diets, I think it's good to define that first. It's going to be removing certain macronutrients or food groups like, fat, protein, carbohydrates, removing one of those. Example of that would be a ketogenic diet, whether it's lower on carbohydrate, very low on carbohydrates. Um, we also may be looking at a carnivore diet where we're cutting out entire food groups and just eating meat and fruit and certain like tubers and roots that aren't as inflammatory, right? And so I am not a fan of long-term restrictive diets. I am a fan of restrictive diets for a particular situation used as a tool for a short period of time to get a desired outcome or to give us more information about what the system can tolerate or doesn't do well. The way that what I mean by that is like an elimination diet for 1 to 2 months is a great way to let things calm down, let the inflammation subside a little bit, and then start to reintroduce foods one at a time to see which one is causing the problem. It's kind of like going to a bar at 2 in the morning when everybody's being really loud and trying to figure out who's being a pain in the butt, right? You can't because everybody's loud, the music's on, so you turn the jukebox off, you have everybody leave, and you bring them in one at a time to see who is the loudest, right? That's how we determine what foods we can tolerate and not. That's a gold standard that is, I would say, better than doing like gut testing. Now, from someone who has tried to heal themselves with restrictive diets, and we have this uh, belief from growing up that we're not good enough, that we've got to do this all on our own, that I'm going to work hard, I don't need any help, and I'm just going to run through walls. Well, we build this grit and this resilience that says I can do anything. And so if we take that type of mentality and we override the body and we quit listening to the signs to stop or have some of this food or less of this or more of that, this food isn't helping me right now. Well, then we tend to override the sensations of our body in the name of health, but that's really a trauma response that's motivating us to do it even harder. When the restrictive diet doesn't work, we increase the restriction, we push it harder because more is going to be better, right? And that's a really sticky rabbit hole to go down where we're just really restricting and punishing ourselves in the name of health. But if we zoom out, that is an attempt to control things and override our system that just keeps us stuck in the loop of trauma and sickness and dis-ease. And to step out of that, we have to see these patterns and start to make different decisions. And that's where the work is done. Diet, exercise, certain detox protocols, all the functional medicine. These things are fantastic, but they're meant to be supportive, not the healing process. I think the healing process is healing the beliefs, the unresolved trauma that is a result of intense stress when we were younger than we are today, and that is asking to be healed if we're getting these types of symptoms.
Hmm. Thank you so much, Mr. Mitch. And I know you said diets, You said exercise, but I would like to know, like, how do you also help clients set realistic health goals? And what role do you think accountability play in achieving them, sir?
So, um, how do I guide my clients to create realistic goals? Well, it's really going to be getting to know them and all these aspects of life that I think go into making a good decision for what is healthy on a movement, as a movement practice. I'll say I get a lot of clients that have autoimmune and they're not sleeping and they're not eating as much as they could. They're very fatigued. Their guts are off, so they're not able to assimilate nutrients. And in that case, I'm going to recommend that someone does very little, more like, walking, maybe some gentle yoga, sitting in the sauna. We want to be moving throughout the day, but we also don't want to override what's going on. By throwing someone into too tense or too strenuous of an exercise before they're ready, you can really disrupt hormones, cause endocrine dysfunction. You can mess with their sleep and their stress levels. We know that exercise is healthy and that it can reduce stress, but when it's chronically applied and it's outside of what this person can handle, it can be detrimental. So we're really going to be clear on where we are now, in a very honest way, and what we're currently doing and what's worked in the past. And we're going to take the minimum effective dose approach, and as ready as they're able to increase, I want to see them lifting heavy weight. I want to see them taking long walks and getting 10,000 steps in a day. Hitting maybe three strength training sessions in a week. But to do that, that requires a lot of the body, and we have to progress to that. So we're going to start with the minimum effective dose, and we're going to adjust and progress as the client shows that they're willing and able and ready to perform that. Now, as far as accountability, um, I think for that, that's a big benefit of having a coach, and knowing that someone's watching and going to ask, "Did you do what we decided?" Is a big factor in people being successful or not. But I think there can be that, and I think that's very important to go with like the minimum effective dose, so we're not inappropriately overloading the client and putting this pressure on them
Mm,
to do something that's outside of their window of tolerance. And instead, let's get some wins. Let's do something that's easy for the first couple of weeks and ramp up our activity so that we're knowing we're doing the appropriate amount, not hurting ourselves.
mm. Thank you so much, Mr. Mitch. And what advice do you think you can give to those who are struggling to maintain a consistent fitness routine, sir?
Um, I would say start small. Start
Okay.
with something that's attainable and doable, and let's be really honest about where we're at. And you know, say you can do. I love the adage that's coming to mind that Pavel Tazzolini talks about. He's a Russian kettlebell instructor, and he's real big on the thing called greasing the groove, right? And so I know that when I was a younger man, I wanted to, we call it going to the well, right? Going to failure, meaning if I can do 9 reps of something, I'm going to be going 9, 10, 11, 12, and really pushing things. That's what I used to think it required to get stronger. And what I've learned now as I've gotten older is I want to recover faster. I want to train more often. And to do that, we don't want to go to our limit every time. We want to do more like the 60% range, 70% range at max. And that would look like if I can do 10 reps, I'm going to do 6 or 7, and I'm going to leave some reps in the tank so that I can show up, do that consistently, recover faster, and be able to get more exercise in without overwhelming and overstressing myself.
Hmm. Thank you so much, Mr. Mitch. And lastly, there's a question I normally ask, sir. From the ancestors, from the forefathers, if there is anything you would like to bring back to our time today, what do you think that thing will be, sir?
I would encourage people to heal their nervous system.
Okay.
to know that what what I've learned through 20 years of doing this work and having chronic disease, having traumatic brain injuries, having heavy metals, diabetes, being overweight, having multiple long haul COVIDs. I went to some really dark places and, assumed that I was broken and that I couldn't be fixed and I needed to find some perfect diet, some perfect exercise, the perfect detox. And when those things didn't help to the level that I was hoping, they didn't meet my expectations, I tended to go harder, push myself harder, and end up hurting myself. And what I end up discovering is where when we have trauma and we have unprocessed, um, unworked with stress in our body, that is what causes disease, right? That's what causes us to have
Hmm.
anxiety and mental illness and not sleep and autoimmune and gut issues and fatigue. That's it. And so I would encourage people to heal their nervous system and to reconnect with their body and become their own medicine. If when we have trauma, we tend to go to our head to think our way to safety. And what we're doing there is we're trying to control a situation, which is really keeping us in stress. And what I'm encouraging people to do is to come back to the body, to listen to the body, and to get that wisdom because that's where the healing is. And instead of relying on some diet or some influencer or some exercise or a way to punish or hurt yourself, we rely on the body's wisdom, and we become our own medicine in this way.
Wow, I really learned something there. Thank you so much, Mr. Mitch. I want to personally thank you for your time, for having the interest to be on my show. Thank you for everything and thank you for the information. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today. It was my pleasure, man.
All right, so have a wonderful day, sir. Bye bye.
Bye bye.